saying the big secret to healthy aging is cutting out sugar. I mean, I thought it would be some other mechanism, but it's the same thing that this cancer doctor said. The same thing that my friend who's a cardiologist said 30 years ago. He said, if you could take a group of 100-year-old people with absolutely perfectly clean arteries, who had no heart disease, what's the one thing that they would have in common? They would all be insulin sensitive, meaning they were really good at regulating their blood sugar and insulin. They didn't eat a lot of starch and sugar, their insulin didn't spike, it didn't create all these downstream effects that accelerate aging. So when you look at diabetes, it's the worst manifestation of insulin resistance. But we're calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. 2/3 of heart disease is caused by prediabetes. Many of our modern cancers that are the pandemic cancers are caused by insulin resistance. So it's the same mechanism, whether it's diabetes. And so I see the causes of death in the world being heart disease, cancer, and dementia as the top leading causes. I'm like, yeah, they're all the same. It's not like a bunch of separate things, even though diabetes might not be super high on the list. Diabetes is a factor that causes all these things, or pre-diabetes. And you don't have to have diabetes to cause a problem, right? Pre-diabetes can cause heart attacks, can cause cancer, and can cause dementia. So we have to get out of this idea of pre-diabetes or diabetes. It's just metabolic dysfunction that means that only 12% of us are metabolically healthy. And what that means is that only 12% of us are like those 100-year-olds who have clean arteries. Only 12% of us are metabolically healthy. The other 88% is not. And that is a scary statistic. And that is not our natural evolutionary state. Our natural evolutionary state is to be vibrant and healthy and long and functional. And people say, oh, everybody died, life expectancy was 40 years old. Nonsense. Half the people died at birth or before 2 years old, and half of them died really old. When you look at Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, they died in their 90s. They were old. When you look at the Native Americans, they died very, very old. You see the Okinawans, they died very old. It's not that our bodies can't, it's that when given the conditions of our modern life, we accelerate aging. It's like, if you want to age fast, come live in America. It's like the perfect cooking pot for accelerated aging. And why is it a problem? It creates so much suffering. It creates so much disability. It creates so much economic loss. It creates so much loss of quality of life and productivity. I mean, the costs of chronic disease, mostly caused by this phenomenon of metabolic poor health, over the next 95 years, the cost to society and disability, loss of productivity, absenteeism, healthcare costs over the next 35 years is $95 trillion. That is a staggering amount of money. Now, to put that in perspective, that's more than the entire world economy every year. Like, that's a staggering amount of money, and yet it's almost all preventable. So while we think we can't do much about aging, while we think we may not be able to do that much about preventing disease, while we may think our genes are our destiny, nothing could be further from the truth. We have the potential at any age to rejuvenate, to repair, to regenerate, and to become super healthy. So I just want to share a story that I find almost unbelievable, but it shows the power of applying this approach to chronic disease and to all the diseases of aging. Now, this is something that most doctors never see because we're never trained on how to apply this method to our patients. This person was 66. Her name was Janice. She had pretty much every chronic disease you could imagine. She was very overweight. Her body mass index was 43, normal is under 25, over 30 is obese. She had type 2 diabetes, had been on insulin for over a decade. She had high blood pressure. She had heart disease, had multiple stents in her arteries. She had heart failure. Her heart wasn't pumping blood around well. Her kidneys were failing. Her liver was failing. And she was on a pile of drugs that were costing a fortune every year. And her doctors were managing her disease. Now, she grew up very well educated, but her family had a very bizarre food culture. They just never cooked, and all they ate was processed food. And that's all she knew. And that's all she ate her whole life. And it turned her into this metabolic disaster. So she came to see us at Cleveland Clinic, and we put her in a group program, and we simply changed her diet from this inflammatory, diabetic-inducing diet to an anti-inflammatory, whole foods, unprocessed, good diet that's low in starch and sugar and high in good fats. And what happened next was just like a miracle, except it's not a miracle, it's just science. She got off insulin in 3 days. In 3 months, she reversed her heart failure, which never happens. Like, she was on her way to a heart transplant and a kidney transplant. So we can manage heart failure, but we can't cure it. Well, in her case, her heart failure reversed, her kidneys normalized, her liver normalized, her blood pressure normalized, her blood sugar normalized. She went from wildly out of control blood sugar to normal blood sugar. And then in 3 months, she was off all her medications. She lost 43 pounds. In a year, she lost 116 pounds. And she did it through applying the principles that we talked about of functional medicine and optimizing her biology. So if someone who's that far gone at 66 can use these methods to reverse these diseases, to reverse her biological clock, imagine what you could do by applying these when you're a little bit younger and not as sick. It's incredibly powerful. And if there was a drug on the planet that could do all these things that food and lifestyle and exercise and so forth can do, I'd be prescribing it to everybody I knew. But there ain't. There just isn't. And there never will be. No matter how good our science is, no matter how great we are at drug development, no matter how smart we are at figuring out the pathways of these diseases, you're never going to be able to take a pill to prevent all heart disease, to prevent cancer, to treat and prevent dementia. You're just not. You might manage it a little bit. You might reduce the risk by 20, 30, 40%, but you're never going to have the impact that applying the principles that you're learning in this docuseries to your life to effectively reverse your biological clock. And not only do that, but to optimize your health and energy and vitality so that you put years into your life and life into your years.